Hello, the topic for today is food chains and webs. First of all, what is a food chain? A food chain is a list of organisms showing who eats whom and the amount of energy transferred. So let us take an example. This is a food chain. Here it is a plant which is a producer because plants prepare their own food, and this plant is fed by a caterpillar which is in turn consumed by a frog. Then this frog is eaten up by a snake, and finally the owl eats the snake. So here this is a chain showing the organisms which shows who eats whom, and also an amount of energy is transferred. Let us see how. For an example, when this frog is consumed by a snake, snake gets energy because frog gives energy to the snake. So let us see how this energy is transferred and what is a food chain in detail. The various steps in a food chain at which transfer of food takes place are called trophic levels. For an example, here this is a plant, and this plant transfers food to the caterpillar, which in turn transfers the food to the frog, and frog will transfer it to the snake, and finally the snake to the owl. So at each level food is transferred. So every level is called a trophic level, and according to the levels it is being primarily differentiated. So plants are primary trophic levels because they produce food. They are called the primary trophic level. The next one is the secondary trophic level. These are called the primary consumers because they consume on the plant. The next one is the tertiary trophic level. Followed by it is the quaternary trophic level. Well, food chain always begin with plants as they are autotrophs and they prepare their own food by photosynthesis with the help of sunlight. As you can see, plants prepare their food with the help of sunlight, and this plant prepares the food, and that food is in turn taken up by herbivores like a giraffe. So giraffe consumes the plant. In turn, this giraffe is again eaten up by carnivore like a lion. So here we can see a food chain. So let us see the example again. Here we have the producer, which is a green plant, and this green plant is in turn consumed by a herbivore, which is a giraffe. Hence it is called primary consumer, and energy is transferred from the plant to the giraffe. Now this herbivore, that is the giraffe, is in turn consumed by a carnivore such as a lion. Hence the lion is the secondary consumer. Finally, when the lion dies, it is completely decomposed with the help of decomposers like fungi and bacteria. Well, why do we eat food? We eat food to get energy. And what is that energy needed for? It is needed for growth, movement, reproduction, and repair. So, to perform various activities in the body, we need energy, and that energy we get by taking food. Here we can see how energy is transformed in a food chain. How does the energy transfer in a food chain? Here, green plants capture about 1% of sun's energy and convert it into food energy. Here, you can see the green plants, and they take 1% of the sun's energy to prepare their food. Now, 90% of this energy is utilized by the plants and also left into the atmosphere in the form of heat, and only 10% of it is transferred to the next trophic level. To understand it in detail, let us see. If a plant produces around 1000 kilojoules of energy, then the plant utilizes 90% of it, and some of it is also left into the atmosphere in the form of heat. And remember, heat can never be reused. So only 10% of the energy is left for another trophic level, and only 10% is transferred to another trophic level. So here in the next trophic level, where it is the primary consumer, we can see a rabbit eating the same plant. When this rabbit eats a plant, it again utilizes 90% of the energy for its growth, and 10% of it is left into the atmosphere as heat. And again, it transfers just 10% to another trophic level. So here again, it is the snake which consumes this rabbit. Again here, it is utilizing 90% of it for its growth, development, and some of it is left as heat in the atmosphere, and only 10% of it will be carried out to the next trophic level. So initially, if we see, if 1000 kilojoules is being produced by the plant, it utilizes 90%, and in that some is out as heat, and only 10% of this is transferred to the next trophic level, which is 100 kilojoules. And from this 100 kilojoules, only 10%, that is 10 kilojoules, is transferred to the final level. So this law is also called as 10% law, where for every trophic level, only 10% of energy is being transferred. We can understand this in detail here with this diagram. See, with the help of light energy that is provided by the sun, plants that are primary producers prepare food. And if we say 20,000 kilocalories are being prepared, then the plant utilizes 90% of it and transfers only 10% to next trophic level, that is the primary consumers, and that is just 2000 kilocalories. Again, primary consumers forward or transfer just 10% of it, that is 200 kilocalories, and secondary consumers transfer 10% of what they have, and that is 20 kilocalories. And finally, at the top level, it is just 2 kilocalories. So this is how energy is transferred. At every trophic level, only 10% of energy is being transferred. So since at every trophic level in a food chain, 90% of energy is utilized for the maintenance of the organism. Like few of it is used for its growth, development, and the rest is left out as heat in the atmosphere. So after every 3 or 4 trophic levels, see this is having 1, 2, 3, 4 trophic levels. So after every 3, 4 trophic levels, the amount of energy is gradually reducing, gradually decreasing. That means at the topmost trophic level, the energy which is available is very, very less. And this energy is not sufficient for the development of the organism. And hence, the trophic levels are always limited. Usually, we see 3 to 4 trophic levels in any ecosystem. See, the flow of energy in an ecosystem is always unidirectional because energy lost as heat from living organisms in a food chain can't be reused by plants in photosynthesis. Now let us look at the same example, that is the plant, rabbit and the snake. So here the plant is being consumed by the rabbit and rabbit is being consumed by the snake. So in this process energy is only transferred, but the energy is never given back. Even the sunlight which is utilized by the plant is again not given back to the sun. So here the energy is always unidirectional and it's lost and can't be regained. But always remember, energy is different from nutrients, whereas the flow of nutrients is bidirectional. When nutrients are transferred from one level to another, when the organism dies, when at the final level when the organism dies, the nutrients are released into the atmosphere and again they are reused. So the flow of nutrients is bidirectional while energy flow is unidirectional, which is a very important point. Yes, important point is biological magnification. So what is biological magnification? These days pollution is seen everywhere. So since plants are the producers, we have seen a lot of soil pollution. So the increased concentration of harmful chemical substances like pesticides, DDT. What is DDT? DDT is dichloro diphenyl trichloroethane. What is DDT? DDT is dichloro diphenyl trichloroethane. So which is not so important. So this percentage of DDT accumulates in living organisms at each trophic level. So since this DDT level, since pesticides are used for the growth of the plant, the soil will contain this and that is drained into the water bodies which will be eaten up by the aquatic organisms. Like the same, that particular DDT or the pesticide is accumulated in the next trophic levels as it is non-biodegradable. So as each trophic level increases, the concentration of DDT also increases, which is very harmful to the organisms. So when we buy green vegetables, fruits or vegetables, so it is very difficult to remove this DDT as sometimes this DDT cannot be removed even by washing them neatly. So we have come to the last part, that is the food webs. So generally each organism is eaten by two or more other kinds of organisms which are in turn eaten by several other organisms. So instead of a straight food chain, we get a branched chain showing a food web. For an example, you can see here this is a plant. This plant is eaten by a caterpillar, eaten by a grasshopper, and eaten by several other insects. And in turn, this grasshopper is eaten by a mice, it is also eaten by a bird. So every organism in a food web is eaten by two or more several other organisms forming a branching relationship. So this network of food chains existing in an ecosystem is called a food web. The ecosystem becomes stable if it contains many food chains. So if an ecosystem has many food chains, then that will be a very stable ecosystem as it maintains ecological balance. So thank you, and that's it for today.